Stand. Through the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag. Okay. Well, nice to see everyone. And let's hope that Illinois and Northwestern get past the first round. And, Pat is not with us. So
Good. Well, that's good. Yeah, you're not getting any younger. You could use a little, like you.
I know I'm not getting any younger. I'm talking to.
Okay. I don't think they were referring to you.
That was another conversation. I was saying, God, it wasn't something else, but you said that.
I was at the county today to sit alongside Elizabeth and Lloyd and the team. And the chairman, Bueller, reminded the audience that I was a lame duck. So all these references to.
So you only gotta worry about those horses when you're the only one.
Yeah.
All right, so let's call the roll, please.
President Cook,
I'm here.
Vice President Dom,
Here.
Treasurer Cook, absent, Secretary Thomas, here. Trustee Gayton,
Here.
Trustee Zimmerman,
Present.
and Trustee Everard.
Here.
Okay. John, would you do the conservation ethic goals 6 and 3?
Yes, sir. To foster a conservation ethic among McHenry County citizens, helping all of us, regardless of the basis of our interest in nature, to develop a greater awareness of our role in and responsibility for the total community of life. The conservation ethic asks us to assume a moral duty to become educated about conservation issues and then to act on that information. The conservation ethic is an attitude that recognizes the importance of preserving the natural heritage of the county's open space. Goal 3, to manage its areas in such manner that archaeological and historical resources are integrated with natural resources for optimal preservation, education, and recreation benefits.
Thank you. And Ray, would you do the conservation stewardship pledge?
We pledge to make a difference by standing up for our water, wildlife, and way of life in McHenry County. Our quality of life in McHenry County depends on healthy and sustainable natural resources, thoughtfully developed cities and towns, a strong economy, and beautiful outdoor places to explore, discover, and recreate. Number 10, we will help to build a sustainable and vibrant local economy by providing a destination for outdoor recreation experiences.
Okay, thank you. Next is adopting the agenda. Any issues with adopting the agenda from anyone? Okay. Does that require a vote, Elizabeth?
We should do it.
Okay, then let's do
I move to adopt the agenda as is.
it. Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Lloyd.
Trustee Everard, was that you? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Secretary Thomas?
Yes.
Trustee Zimmerman?
Yes.
Trustee Gayton,
Yes.
Vice President Dom,
Yes.
Trustee Everard.
Yes.
And President Cook.
Yes. 7.1 is a report on the cleanest barn existing condition analysis. So that looks like Don, you and Amy are going to take us through this.
Yes, Amy will actually be doing the presentation, but this is the backdrop to it. We I think it was approximately a year ago, we engaged the services, or 6 months ago, engaged the services of the consultants to do an evaluation of a structure that's in Glacial Park, and to consider what would have to happen to it if it was turned into a shop facility. And so Amy has a report which she will walk you through.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I guess before we get started, after I say thank you, Kelly O'Connor is the architect. And so if we could let her in case she's out there in Zoom land.
She's on.
Is she, yeah, so she can speak, she can hear me, Kelly? She should be, this is a little odd. Just ask her.
I'm here, Amy. Can you hear me?
I can, Kelly, you can hear me all right?
Yep, yep.
Thanks. We just wanted to put together, everybody has had a time to read the report, I hope. And we can get to this next slide here of, like John had said, it is just an inventory of what we had. We didn't know what kind of condition that it was in. And we inherited it, or we purchased it. And so the purpose then of this is to get a team together to come out, look at it, document it from all of the standpoints of structural, architectural, MEPs, what's there. They were to then provide the recommendations, tell us what requirements we would need to follow to bring it up to code, and then compare two cost estimates, one for the renovations, and then as a comparative one for new construction of a similar building with the same function. A little bit of the back, well, first the team. So Kelly is on with me from Studio 222. We've worked with them before on multiple projects, so we were thrilled to have her back on. And then for our structural engineering, she had a consultant, and also for our MEPs. And then the internal project team was myself, Sarah Rummel, our senior landscape architect. We had operations division, so we had the manager, and then we also had both sites and the building maintenance all meet out on site, walk through, and they've gone along this process with us. So got a good team, lots of eyeballs and brains on it. Again, just for those of you that don't know, this is a picture of Glacial Park. This is where the building is, right there on the corner of 31 and Harts Road. Yep. And the next one is a zoom in a little bit, just more of the description of the landscape and around it. So again, like we said, we don't have any plan sets on it. We can see though through air photos that it was somewhere between 88 and 99 that it was built, and it was built primarily for horses. So there's 22 stables, a big open spare area, dirt floor that was used as an arena. Again, it's about 14,500 square feet. And the district acquired it in 2011. Kelly, I might ask you to jump in. The next sets of slides were just, again, just to give you some idea of the existing conditions. They vary from the exterior. Again, it's in decent shape. There are some concerns. You can see the dents, things like that, vegetation up around the building. But I'll scroll through these unless anybody wants to spend time. But inside, then the one on the left, the two, those are just the two main areas. The building is split up into three main areas. So the top left is an image of the stables. The lower left is just the open area that was the arena where we have storage now. And then the two on the right are starting to get into some of the pictures of some of the damage that obviously is a roof issue. It was there was some water damage. Just images of that. The next slide, I think we can jump to. This is just an image. Then the third section of this building is an office. It does, so those are pictures of the office. And then of the heating source is a propane up on the roof right now. There are images of, again, flooring, framing, insulation damage. Again, there's a lot of other pictures to show, but just for the time's sake, to just give you an idea of the
Basically,
condition.
it's a pole building.
It's a pole building. Yep, it's a metal clad wood pole building. Yep. So again, in a real quick snapshot, the findings were, yes, as it is being used as storage only, the conditions are acceptable. However, if we were going to move people into it on a regular basis and repurpose it for a shop, it's not acceptable. And again, on one hand, there's a number of codes that we would need to be meeting. Further on in the report, you can see there's no MEPs, everything would have to be new. That's why the two comparisons are the same price. And we would want to, I think, before we went too much further, is actually go to the county and say, because of the type of structure this is it acceptable that we want to use it and reuse it as a shop? Again, summarizing the renovation improvements and focusing on that. That's what Kelly and her team were looking at. So we have the site work, that's all that outside. What we would need to do, some grading, pitch, we're having water issues because it's sloped the wrong way. Again, we don't have any of the fueling. We have a gravel road and a gravel parking lot that we looked into. Well, septic is very minimal. Again, electrical, we would have to add, and then material storage, that would what we would need to move what we have in one place. And that's salt, that's gravel, things that they use for their maintenance that we would include in looking at the site work. The building envelope, then again, you can see what that all entails. And so when you see the cost estimates, how it's broken down. The building interior, and then is same sort of things, walls, cold storage. Didn't include in here, but an office, bathroom. We did ask Kelly again and her team that if we were going to improve it and make it a better condition in the current shop, a special room specifically for welding. Trying to think of what else, but along with the bathroom, there is no bathroom currently. Obviously, we would need to improve the office space. Cold storage is where we would do vehicles. And so again, you'll see in the report, they call that out. Specific vehicles have specific codes, ventilations, different framing that is required for doors, things like that. And then finally the MEP and the fire suppression. So again, there's nothing there. So the point of the fire suppression and fire alarm, again, that's something to confirm with county. And because of the size of the building, because of the use, it kicks us into that very high cost range right now from a conceptual standpoint. If there's nothing there, life safety, we would obviously need to take that into high consideration. But we might be able to get that down to something else because of just the county and so that's a big number that once you got into it, it may come down. If that makes sense. We have to do something, but we may not have to do a full sprinkler system. Again, it also has to do with having a separate water service. We had the same kind of thing at LVBC that we encountered once we got into it. So the next slide is then cost estimate. And so again, just basically in those same categories, I condensed it. You see the renovation next to the new construction. So our subtotal is 1.4 and 2.1. And then you add just the contingencies, escalation costs, normal types of things that get added on to a project. It brings it up to a total of 2.1 or 3.1, depending on renovation and new construction. Tonight, what we're asking you is just to accept the report. And as you all are aware, we have a lot to still consider and think about. And right now, we're not ready for that. Since just absorbing this report, letting us move on to some of the projects that are in construction. Let us get through that phase. And then we can come back with this and know that, we have other buildings to consider, what makes sense to really evaluate now that we have this information that we didn't have before when we started this conversation.
Are you happy with the report? Did it give you that information that you were hoping to get?
Yes,
Okay, good.
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. do you want me to ask if Kelly has anything to add that would be helpful, or do you have any questions specifically that we could ask her?
I have
We
no,
don't have to.
I have no specific questions. Kelly's kind enough to be there, so if Kelly, if there's something she would like to tell us in a very brief statement, we'd be happy to listen. We can only-
I think Amy did a great summary. I think the biggest takeaway is that, whether you were to renovate the existing building or build a new structure on that particular site of the same size, the MEP costs are pretty much going to be the same, just due to the fact that what's the existing services that are out there aren't adequate. Some other things to maybe think about in terms of the existing structure is the anticipated lifetime for a metal clad wood pole barn building like is out there is approximately 50 years or so. And as Amy stated, I think we're approximately 25 to 30 years into that 50-year lifespan. Now, for sure, the 50 years could get extended, with regular maintenance and repairing or replacing the wood poles as they begin to deteriorate. And they will deteriorate, just based on the fact that they're basically sitting in the wet ground. There's no formal concrete foundation or anything. So they will deteriorate over time. And so it just kind of becomes, a trade-off in terms of how much maintenance you want to and repair you want to put into the building, to increase the lifespan on it. Another thing that the structural engineer mentioned that maybe should be taken into consideration when thinking of repurposing the existing facility is just the fact that there's not much flexibility in terms of the structure. And when I say that, the existing columns are on like approximately a 10-foot on center span. I don't know if Amy's got that stable photo that she can bring up, but there's essentially columns at each stall, and just due to the nature of wood pole barn buildings, those columns would need to remain if you were to repurpose the facility. So the original thought, I think, was that this half where the stalls are located would potentially be the shop area. So the shop facilities would have to be worked around the existing columns as they are. And then in addition, anything that were to get hung from the roof structure, the existing roof structure, if for example, you wanted to add the high velocity, low speed fans, we would have to reinforce all of that because the existing structure just wasn't designed to take those sorts of added loads. But I don't know, Amy, is there anything else you'd like me to touch on? I know you mentioned the cost. Typically kind of an industry standard is once when you're evaluating whether to do a renovation or to build new, if the renovation cost starts to approach 60 to 70% of the cost of building new, it may make sense at that point to just build new. And I think when I looked at it, the renovation cost in this case was approximately 68 to 69% the cost of building new. So, you're pretty much right there at that threshold. But you know, that's assuming you need a building, of the size that's out there, for the shop facility. And I know those are all things you guys, you know, want to consider and look at too.
Thanks very much. That's very helpful.
That was my big question. What was your proposal for the size of a new building for the needs?
Same footprint.
Yeah, we did like a 1-for-1 comparison. You know, if you don't need something of that size, you know, obviously the cost would go down. And
That
We
was
can-
my question was, you know, I mean, if you're building new and you got the ability to check mark the boxes of everything like in it, would that save us money by reducing the size, or you still need 14,000 square feet?
Well, we didn't ask Kelly to answer that question yet, but I do have, what we did is looked at some of the other shops and what sizes are they for cold storage. So we have that, the cold storage could be smaller. Right? We have Primus at 10,000, Region 1 shop is at 6,400 square feet. This is just cold storage,
Right.
right? So, but again, then if you start thinking, okay, we're gonna add teams, and then you're back to the Grebo cold storage is at 5,000
Okay.
square footage. So we're thinking of those things.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it balances out to say repurposing, as she said, I was thinking the same thing, of around 60 or 70%, you're probably better off building new, but then could we save then by not having so large of a facility?
Sure.
Or maybe
Right.
utilize. And then build a new shop.
Yeah, and we started looking at that too, again, internally to
makes sense.
see where that would put us, right? You could keep the building as is, just.
Maybe fix it up a little bit.
Then you could build something smaller.
Because cold storage is cold storage.
Yeah, so if you're gonna build new, I heard same footprint, everything, would you tear the old one down and build it on the exact same site?
So that was what was included in this exercise. So actually, the site is a great question. So for the new construction and the cost that's up on the screen for site work, it did include demo of
Okay.
that. It doesn't include the demo of the entire campus of Clima, so the house and the, you know, few buildings that are just to the north of it, that was not included, but yes, to the existing.
Okay, and then the last question, and I don't think it's a concern, but I always ask if there's any asbestos issues. If we were to demolish it, or even refurbish it.
Kelly, can you remind me, are we assuming that there is asbestos that has to be remediated or removed?
We did not make any assumptions, and I don't know that we saw any, when we were out there. Are you guys?
The timeline of the construction of the building would indicate that it wouldn't have any, because I think it was 76.
80s.
80s.
Okay, was it the 80s where they stopped? So we're probably
Oh,
not.
yeah, 70 when they stopped you.
Yeah.
Good, okay, thanks.
74.
Yeah.
Was it 74 when that they stopped using it?
I've watered, I'm 99% sure there's no problem. with
Yeah,
that.
like I said, I don't think so. We would have made note of it, but it's always good to ask.
Well, perhaps a final question. And to ask it, it's what is your thinking in terms of the planning will be complete and you will be ready to recommend a course of action to the board on this shop storage issue?
As Amy
We've been
alluded to,
talking about that.
We've got 4 projects that are in the hopper rolling. Some are rolling right now. We've got a couple of bids in front of you tonight. For approval, that'll be 3 projects. We've got the building demo in Glacial Park that's gonna be rolling also here in a month or 2. So I want them focused on that. So all of the funding and all of the things all came together at the same time. I want that team focused on that. But I have a feeling that as the summer rolls on, we'll be able to start pulling staff together, start pulling these threads. You heard Amy already talking. She's pulling in some of these threads. And we'll continue these conversations and start, rolling on what's next. Because there's a lot of things to consider with this. I mean, and so, if
I'm not gonna lose any sleep over it, John. I'm sure my colleagues here will hear about it, and I just was curious, 12 months, 24 months.
Well, there's different options too. That's what you have to
Yeah.
determine.
Like, we'll have a better idea, early midsummer.
We'll stay tuned.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
That was very good.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it. All right, next up, I think Gabe is gonna bring us up to date on the hunting report and the hunting directive.
Yeah, so unfortunately, you're gonna be deprived of my comprehensive vacation this year, but maybe next year for the new.
That's fine.
Oh, okay. One thing that I wanted to note about the report though, is this program, I get to present it, I have the privilege of presenting each year, but this program goes through the entire district. Everybody touches it. It takes the entire team to roll it out each year, and it really is a district program. The other thing that I would really call attention to with the report, if you didn't notice, is we were within $600 of breaking even with not just the direct expenses, but also all the staff expenses, including their retirement and other benefits. So I think that's worth noting, and that was actually a goal of mine when I took over this program about 9 years ago, was to have it be self-sufficient. We're pretty darn close to being there. So the report was in your board packet. What I'm looking for tonight is just consensus from the board so that I can move forward on providing the directive to the board next month. And most of the changes are similar to years past when we've changed dates and things of that nature. But there's three in particular that I wanted to bring forward for discussion, or if there's any feedback associated with it. And the first one is our waterfall adjustment, which is in the board summary is number 1. The committee is recommending for our reserve program. The waterfall program consists of reserve, combo, and field hunting opportunities. The reserve program is where people are in a lottery and they are securing a location on the water. And previously we said, if you're gonna have this reserved opportunity, you have to hunt from a blind. Some of the feedback that we've received, a way to increase the quality of this hunt is to allow them to either be in the blind, or if they want to, based on wind directions, hunt within a zone. So they could hunt the pond from different sides if the wind was wrong. And this would be consistent with some of the other programs that we have with the combo and the field, where we allow them to be either in a blind or within a zone. So it's similar to other programs, but that would be a new initiative for the reserve hunting. The other one is the board directed staff to look at putting a snowmobile trail through Queen Anne Prairie. And in the board packet, the appendix of the actual report was the survey results. And I asked a specific question to our hunters stating two rule options. One of them would be that the zones would be shut down when the snowmobile trail is open. And the other one would be to create a safety buffer, essentially an area that they couldn't hunt when the snowmobile trail was open. And the overwhelming response from the hunters was to do the second choice, which was to have the buffer and not take away any hunting opportunities as far as dates go, just the actual buffer of the snowmobile trail.
And that's 100 yards.
The staff recommendation was 100 yards total, so 50 yards on either side of the snowmobile trail. What we do on our maps is just delineate that buffer, and then I would write a new rule that would be in the directive in April, describing that new rule of the buffer. So it would be something additional that the hunting program doesn't currently have, but it'd be called out in the directive and on our maps.
Is the hunting program shotgun only?
For waterfall, yes.
What about for
The next one is actually the new rule with the state. The state passed a rifle rule where hunters are allowed to use rifles during the firearm season. And we discussed this extensively at the committee level, also received some feedback that our officers went and talked with the state parks in particular, how they were going to handle this rule. And there's a lot of unknowns with this rule right now, specifically how the state parks are gonna move forward, and then also if there's gonna be amendments to this rule. Evidently, once the rule got put out, there was a lot of questions that were raised, so there's belief that this rule may be amended in the near future. And from the state level, the state parks have not created an acceptable rifle rule yet for their facilities or their programs, excuse me. So with that in consideration and looking through all the different rifle options, it was very difficult for us to come up with a rule that would work. We got way in the weeds talking about specific firearms, and it just got really messy. And I thought that it would be best for us just to stick with the shotgun and muzzle loader until this rule is laid out at the state level and we start getting some guidance from how the state itself is interpreting. So those are the three major recommendations that I thought would be important for the board to hear. And if you have feedback on that, let me know.
Thanks, Kate. I have no specific questions about those recommendations, and I appreciate all the work that you all did with respect to the snowmobile question, and Elizabeth has been in touch with me, and we've gone back and forth on considerations of respecting our goal to conserve wildlife such as the eagle, and at the same time provide recreational opportunities to hunters and snowmobilers who make up, our constituency. And it seemed to me that your proposed trail was well within the guidelines that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife had outlined for not requiring some special permitting with respect to an eagle's nest. So I felt very comfortable with that. And so I thank you for clarifying that.
And we will share that with the full board. So tonight, one of the things is we want to make sure the board has an understanding of the hunting directive.
Yes.
And we wanted to have that before we approve it, and then got caught back into this didn't come before next. In April, what we hope to have for you is we will share the alignment that the teams have been working
So we
on.
have further discussion.
Correct,
Clarify what I said tonight.
exactly.
Thank you. All right. Well, very good. So next is 7.3, and I think this is a review of our land acquisition policy and just to help us answer questions that we may be confronting about the district's policy and what our goals are, short term and long term. So Ed, you've been part of this in battle for nearly as long. So we
I
appreciate-
thought that original question you heard in the beginning was maybe for me. You get pretty old now.
Yeah, right.
Thanks a lot, Bill. And actually, this will be the first of 3 presentations we'll be bringing to you over the next few months that deal with the district's approach to preserving land. This one, which I have tried to condense into 12 slides, covers the last decade and where we have been in terms of land protection efforts and how they have unfolded, and to try to answer some of, as Bill mentioned, some of the common questions that we receive at all levels of the organization, from trustees down to staff, concerning how and why the district protects land. The next 2 will involve the scientific underpinnings of what that land protection approach is. And also, the last one, we'll talk about where there are still areas that contain high quality resources in the county that haven't been protected. But for tonight, we're going to take a look at essentially the last 11 years. The presentation is not designed to provide you information on the development of our amenities or educational programs. It really strictly deals with natural resource related questions. It is not designed to be comprehensive down to the absolute quarter acre of what the district has preserved, but rather in very broad acreages. And again, as I said, it's designed to provide some factual information for those questions that were asked over and over again. Questions that I believe I was asked the first year I worked at the district, and have probably been asked every year since then. So can we go to the second? The time frame that was selected on purpose. And it is because it generally coincides with that period of time after the spend out of the 2007 bond funds. And that is a very particular period of time, and I selected it on purpose. Not only because it's the most recent, but because it's a very different era than the era of time when the district was utilizing 2 successful ballot measures to conserve land. It includes multiple forms of land protection, so that is be simple, which we all know is purchasing property or some interest in property, gifts, conservation easements, and a number of other ways that the district has worked to preserve land resources in the county. It also includes some lands that have been preserved by our land protection partners that are working in the county. And I have sorted those to only include the lands that those partners have protected that either adjoin or lie in very close proximity to our holding. These other organizations work across the county, but where they interface with us is really close to our sites and where their work dovetails with ours. It also highlights land that has been protected by other conservation partners, which were identified initially by the district as priorities for land protection. So where other organizations have done the work of preserving what has been identified as a high quality land protection project, and the district has not had to do that work. Next. And the selection of the time really requires us to understand the efforts that were funded through the 2001 and 2007 ballot measures that were approved overwhelmingly by the voters of the county. And it's important to understand those because, as I said, they form a very different period of time in land protection history for the district. And we get questions about them periodically, even today, 11 years after we've spent out the last monies from those bond referendums. So it's important to realize that the voters approved both measures, understanding that the majority of the funds, not all, but the majority would be used for land protection. Some would be used for the creation of amenities, some for ecological restoration, but the majority would be used for land protection. The accelerated pace of those efforts that occurred from 2001 to about 2010 is in part the result of the legal guidelines for how quickly bond referendum money has to be spent out. So there is a time frame, and that was really one of the drivers behind rapid acquisition of holdings for the district. We also utilized a very well-developed and scientifically based approach to help guide those bond purchase referenda efforts. The bond referendum designation for land protection and amenity development were also augmented in this 10-year time period by a very robust grant application set of efforts by district staff. So having the bond referendum money to match either amenity development or land protection allowed district staff and the boards that were here at the time to actually extend the amount of money that had been designated by the ballot measures by several $1 million for land protection and for amenity development. So, for example, if we applied for an OSLAD grant, it would grant $750,000 for land acquisition. We would have $750,000 to match it from bond funds, and would be able to purchase a piece of property worth $1.5 million. So that period of time, if you look back in it, is marked by a very robust grant application period for the district. And it's not to say we've stopped applying for grants; we still do a great many of them. But that's a period of time when you're really using it across the district and all the divisions. It's also a period of time when the development pressures were the most intense that the county has ever experienced. And it was during the period of time of spend out for these 2 referenda that we experienced that type of rapid growth. Actually, it's really kind of interesting to note that during this period of time, McHenry County was identified a couple of times in national literature as one of the fastest growing counties in the United States. So it was very severe development pressure. We go forward to the next one. So I bring this up, and again, remember, we're putting these into large pots, not down to the specific quarter acre, but it allows you to see where district land protection efforts have been since our creation in 1971. And if you take a look from 1971 to 2001, when the first bond referendum was passed, the district preserved about 12,000 acres countywide. If you go through the next two ballot measures, you can see that we moved from 12,000 to 20,000 very quickly, and from 20,000 to just over 25,000 because of the availability of those bond funds. And then you can see that from that, in that post 2007 ballot period, we've only moved up a very slight amount. So one important takeaway from this is that 2001 to 2010 is really an anomaly in terms of how much land the district has protected. If you look at what is a quote, a normal amount of land for the district to protect over time, and you look to the period prior to and after the ballot measure, you really see what's more typical of district land protection efforts over the past 50 years. The other thing to realize is that during 1971 to the early 1990s, there were only two organizations working on land protection in McHenry County. The district far and away was the largest participant working on land protection. The other partner was the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. There was no National Wildlife Refuge. There were no private land trusts working in McHenry County. The standards for dedication of private land as Illinois nature preserves was still being formulated. A lot of the options that we have today for private land preservation that is non-district related did not exist in that first period of time when the district was beginning to assemble McHenry County's open space. Next. So now we move to a couple of tables that kind of highlight where things have been from 2011 to 2023. And the first set of tables that you see here are related strictly to district efforts. Okay, so if you take a look at it, the table on the right-hand side will just give you the general figures. During this time period, we preserved 682, and as Val reminded me, a half acre of land. And out of that, 332 acres were not purchased in any kind of fee simple mechanism by the district. They were private lands that remain in private ownership, and the district worked to secure conservation easements on them. So they're still in the private sector, they're still owned by private citizens. So a little under half of that land. We did manage to set aside in fee simple about 350 and a half acres. So that gives you the total 682 of really what we've been the primary lead on over that period of time. Yeah. The conservation, what exactly does that mean? Sure. And it's a question we get asked a lot. So imagine a bundle of pencils. And those pencils all represent the rights that you have to do whatever you want to do with your land. And one may be gravel mining, and one may be building a house, and one may be water rights. A conservation easement is the document written specifically for each piece of land in concert with the owner who is attempting to put the easement on it, and the organization that is taking or receiving the easement, and the owner pulls the pencils out of the stack. So conservation easement can be as simple as I will not cut the oak trees on my property, and that's the only part of the easement. And that runs in perpetuity with the land. Typically, they're much more complicated. An owner will give up development rights, they may give up mining rights, they may give up certain agricultural rights, but each one is specific to the piece of land that is being worked on in the easement. It's used across the United States and across the world to secure conservation rights while leaving land in private ownership. There is often a tax benefit to the owner, but the lands remain on the tax roll that are in the easement at a reduced rate. And the rationale for that is some rights have been taken away, so the overall value of that land has been reduced. If we break down the fee simple interest that the district was able to acquire in the same period, it's on the left hand or the larger table. We received about 16.5 acres of straight gifts from people who gifted land to the district. There is a pending transfer of about 12 acres from McHenry County as part of the FEMA-IEMA floodplain buyout program, which is buying out floodplain structures along Nipperson Creek, demolishing the structures, and then passing the open space onto our agency at the conclusion of that program. We have been involved since the very early years of the district in what's now referred to as the surplus property sale for McHenry County. And these are basically properties that are tax delinquent. The district doesn't purchase lands that have houses on them that are in tax delinquency, but there are often lots that were planted many, many years ago in the floodplains. They're not buildable, and as the owners realize that, they simply quit paying taxes on them because there's no value to them. The majority of those that we purchased have been along Nipperson Creek at the Nipperson Canoe Base and Spring Grove Fen. And I believe over the past 50 years, we've purchased 600 of these lots. And they actually are in old wetland basins, so they form contiguous blocks next to the sites we have. We have also acquired 299 acres in fee simple with all or some of the funding contributed by non-district sources. So those could be from our other partners like McHenry County Conservation Foundation, Ducks Unlimited, Open Lands, the Illinois Clean Energy Foundation, and we've received requests from the states with specific requests to purchase land with those monies. So in these 299 acres, the district either did not pay the entire purchase price and only some of it because the rest was picked up by these donors or these partners, or in some cases, it was a zero liability to the district. The partners picked up the entire piece. And then we picked up 10 acres that we just directly purchased without assistance from the outside. So when you look at how those add up, our district direct land costs, I mean, this is not cost for closing or legal fees, but the direct cost of the land has been about $144,000, where we have received outside funding around $2,600,000. So that's about a 14-to-1 ratio. We do have one parcel that is not in this 14-to-1 ratio that actually the owners bought the property and then promptly put it into a conservation easement and dedicated it to the district. So their sole purpose in buying that property was to set it aside as open space and to see that the district had an interest. So we're kind of at a loss sometimes how we quantify that one. But it was certainly a $500,000 purchase that the district did not have to find in its tax levy. There have been a total of 44 projects countywide in this time period that have dealt with land protection. And 18 of them have been driven by the district, and 26 have been completely partner driven by our conservation partner. So next slide. And this will give you a little bit of feeling for those conservation partners. So these are organizations that also have an interest in conservation in McHenry County. Some of them are McHenry County based, like the Land Conservancy. Others are regionally based, like Open Lands, which works across the 6-county region. But they all partner with the district on land protection efforts, depending on what the particular project is. And often we do not bring to the table funds, but we bring to the table expertise. So we're able to add to the work that goes on in these projects through our knowledge of land management, of natural resources, valves management, of business matters related to real estate. So we contribute in different ways to these projects. But suffice to say that other partners have been the leads on these 26 other projects. So if you break these out, it's been about 106 acres that have been in private conservation easements that have gone to the Land Conservancy or the Fish and Wildlife Service. Close to 400 that has been purchased by Open Lands through the Illinois Clean Energy Foundation and then transferred to the Fish and Wildlife Service as part of the National Wildlife Refuge. They are holding about 644 acres for eventual transfer as federal money become available. Some lands were purchased either directly by IDNR or through partners and then transferred to IDNR. There have been some gifts that have conservation gifts that have gone directly to our partners. Some have been purchased by organizations be simple other than the McHenry County Conservation Foundation, and I broke that out because our foundation works specifically with us. And so you can see those last two lines are the acreage that has been picked up by other partners outside of MCCF, and then the next line below is the acreage and the amounts that MCCF has been brought in. So what's interesting about it when you look at it is 2,300 acres have been preserved by our partners during this time period in McHenry County at a cost of almost $19 million, which equates to a 30% referendum, if you will, of available land protection funds. These have not been drawn from the tax levy. These are dollars that come into the county for conservation from outside of it or through donations of people that live within the county. And I think that's important to know. That is quite a substantial amount of land, and it forms the bulk of what has been preserved over this 11-year period. Another interesting thing about this that I think is very important to know is this acreage that is on this table. It all consists of lands that the district identified as high priority for conservation and initially identified as projects that we may have to do in the future in order to protect those lands. So essentially 2,300 acres of land that the district identified as important for open space have been protected by our partners. Next slide. I'd like to deal a little bit with 5 of the most common misconceptions about district land protection efforts that are very common. And you hear them everywhere from the county fair to just casual conversation. So let's go to the first one. There's often a perception that the district just buys land randomly, and that is not the case. The district developed its first systematic approach to land protection in the mid-1970s, shortly after it was formed as an agency by a voter referendum. And at that time, the district divided the county into 4 conservation regions based on the 4 major watersheds: Nipissing, Fox, Piscataquis, and Kishwaukee. Today, you see the vestige of that original plan in what we call regions 1, 2, 3, and 4, which we still use for maintenance. But their genesis is in this period as areas to purchase and protect land. This approach was updated in the early 2000s, and it began to incorporate information that was emerging on preserves design from not only across the United States, but across the world. More and more science research is being done on what does it take to create a preserve that will allow the biodiversity of plants and animals that are part of that preserve, the reason for making it. What will it take to have those species survive in the ecological long haul into the future? That was coupled with the creation and the accomplishment of several major scientific inventories that were specifically targeted in McHenry County, and that includes the Illinois and McHenry County Natural Areas Inventory, which sought out the very best remaining places in the county from a natural heritage perspective. The McHenry County Aided Wetland Study, which located the highest quality functional and compositional wetlands. The McHenry County Green Infrastructure Plan, which the county developed. The Chicago Wilderness Green Infrastructure Plan. The Illinois Department of Natural Resources Stream Classification Plan, which rated the highest quality streams. No surprise, many of them were in McHenry County. And so all those scientific studies, along with this new information on preserve design, helped us to refine our approach and make it more systematic, more scientifically based for where the prime areas for open space preservation were at. And we continue to refine that about every 5 to 7 years as new information comes out, and we're in that process right now. A second misconception that comes up is that the district purposely purchases prime farmland. And what I can tell you, the identification and purchase of prime farmland has never been a goal of district land protection projects. Sellers that we deal with are generally not willing to split parcels for purchases, and that's how we wind up with buildings and also prime farmland. And the reason for that is the distribution of soils in McHenry County is very different than it is in many other parts of the state. So if you look at a typical McHenry County 80 acres, it may have as many as 20 different soil types on it, depending on where it's at. Some are prime, some are not. And there are very, very few landowners, if any, who would be willing sell you a purchase based along the snaky soil lines that characterize most McHenry County land parcels. So the inclusion of some well-drained soils happens by the very nature of how parcels are arranged in McHenry County. And that's important because well-drained soils give us sites for recreational uses and for the development of our infrastructure. It's also essential for some land management and restoration purposes, particularly the reconstruction of black soil prairies. And I bring them up, these are well-drained or mesic or black soil prairies, because they are sort of a hallmark of why sometimes you need to purchase these types of soil. This is one of the most widespread natural communities in Illinois at the time of settlement. Probably close to 20 million acres of the state supported this type of prairie. It's how we got our nickname, the Prairie State. The Illinois Natural Areas Inventory, which was completed in the late 1970s, looked for all the remaining remnants of these black soil prairies. They found 0.1% of those black soil prairies that survived. That natural community type in Illinois is rarer than the tropical rainforest by many times over. In McHenry County, the largest example we have that was not plowed is 18 acres in one block. Most of the other blocks are scattered along old railroad right-of-ways that were put in the 1850s or on the edges of pioneer cemeteries that were set up for burials in the 1840s, 50s, and 60s. That's where you find them. So if we are ever going to have this natural community type as an example, before those last remnants wink out and disappear, it's going to be through reconstruction. And so the district has had a very successful program of understanding these prairies and replanting them on district sites where the soil types are correct. And those are on well-drained, what you might classify as prime agricultural soil. Okay. Why protect more open space until the district has the resources to care for its current holdings? And this is a valid question, and it surfaces very often in conversations about how the district protects land. And I think it's important to understand some things about the county, about its location, and about land protection opportunity. The opportunity to protect open land in the 6 counties around Chicago exists in a limited time frame. And the reason for that is we're experiencing a slowdown in residential and commercial growth over the past decade, but it is temporary. The location of McHenry County, in terms of where it exists between Chicago, Milwaukee, and Rockford, means that we will continue to urbanize in the decades to come. We'll have periods of small urbanization and suburbanation. We'll have periods where it occurs much quicker. And if you look at that pattern in McHenry County, that has been the pattern since the end of World War II. So eventually, the land that is available will become increasingly harder to preserve as open space. Land lost to those uses is generally not recoverable for conservation purposes, or if it is, it involves a substantial investment in financial and other resources to bring it back from a use like a residential subdivision or a commercial lot. About 20% of the lands that the district buys lack very high ecological diversity. They're parts of land we get when we're buying that parcel, but not all of it is of high quality. And those areas can be held in stasis through our existing farm program. So as long as we have the farm program, it produces some revenue, but it also keeps these sites from degrading any further. So they essentially are being managed through our farm program. Lower quality lands can often be prevented from degrading further through minimal land management effort. We may have an area that's not in good condition, but if we can mow it every few years or we can run a fire through it, it doesn't degrade any further. So our land protection efforts often include other than fee simple purchase. So we don't, as a district, we don't always buy a piece of land to preserve it, especially over the last decade. We seek other ways of making that happen. It can be through private conservation easements or private nature preserve dedication. At times, we have actually coupled with private owners to do land management agreements when that works to the benefit of them and to the adjoining district land. The district removes lands from the tax roll, and we do, make no mistake about it. Just as every other conservation organization that purchases land and is a nonprofit does the same thing. But we don't remove all our land from the tax roll. Working lands continue to be taxed. And last year, we paid $124,500 in real estate taxes. And over the last 6 fiscal years, we paid almost $900,000 in real estate taxes. Land that is removed from the tax roll does not produce tax income, but it produces multiple benefits for the residents of the county. And that's through the ecosystem services it provides. Groundwater recharge, flood control, outdoor recreation opportunities, air and water quality improvements, and so on. District sites also provide and stimulate significant economic activity that's related to the public using our open space. That supports local business. If you're coming to Birdwatch at Glacial Park at 6 in the morning, you're just as likely to wind up at a restaurant in McHenry or in Richmond after you're done doing that, having a cup of coffee and eating breakfast. Folks who use our trails routinely stop at places like the Rusty Nail and have lunch. So we are a generator of economic activity that I think has to be understood along with this equation of tax levies being removed. Next. And this is one that I think is important to really understand. How much land is enough? And the nature of human beings is that we would like to have a very specific number, X number of acres, X number of percent, because it's clean and it's tidy and it's easy to make that kind of equation. But it's far more complicated than that. How much land is enough is really a matter of individual perspective. So a farm operator may look at the removal of lands for public open space as making it more difficult to rent enough arable land to make a farm operation successful. Another individual in a different part of the county may look at the congestion in their area and say, there isn't enough public open space, there needs to be more. A hunter may look at the same equation and say, hunting opportunities on private lands are disappearing. We need to have more lands for public hunting. And you can go on through this exercise with many different kinds of people. The interesting thing is that none of these assumptions are incorrect. Every person sees public open space and public lands through a different lens. And it's always been the district's role to try to balance the competing interests of many, many different user groups and to try to make sure that they're taken into consideration when we look at the district's land base, how it's developed, and where it's located. And that will not change. But it's important to remember that we have another constituency that has no voice and does not appear at public board meetings. And it cannot be worked with to come up with a multiple user solution to a problem like we just heard with the snowmobile trail, where we were able to take the competing uses of a snowmobile and a hunting group and come up with a solution that worked for both. When you're looking at biological systems and the species that are part of it, the plants, the animal, the biota, their survival needs are the result of millions of years of evolution, and they're non-negotiable. If a marsh hawk needs 200 acres of grassland to have a successful nest, we can't negotiate the marsh hawk going over to a 60-acre grassland to try to nest. So what I believe the district has tried to do successfully over the years is take that biological information and use it as the foundation for land protection. And then build on that foundation the needs of all of our different user groups. So that we're taking into account our organizing statute, our mission as it has been defined by the Conservation District Act, and the need of the people who support us across the county to use that public open space. It's a very difficult line to walk at times, but I think the district has generally been successful at it. And I will conclude by leaving this slide up by talking about, you just put it back up there, because I didn't find a pretty flower slide for the end of it. Conservation is a really odd thing in terms of human endeavor. It is the efforts of a culture to really ensure kind of intergenerational equity. And equity to generations that aren't even born yet. That they have the opportunity to enjoy the natural world just as our generation and those living in. It's also a recognition that land is really the source of all economic wealth. And that it serves as an irreplaceable genetic savings account for new industrial products, for new medicine, for the disease resistance that the crops that we depend on for food will need into the future. So conservation recognizes values that are out in front of the life of anyone who is in that particular generation. And so each generation approaches the framework of conservation based on its own era and what's important in its own era. If I could define the first century vision of the generation that brought the conservation district into existence and the three that have followed, I would say that our first century vision has been building, preserving the highest quality natural land in the county and building an interconnected system of preserves that can sustain themselves in the face of climate change and suburban growth. And we're halfway past that mark. We are into the last 50 years of that first century vision, and we've come an awful long way towards completing it. The face of conservation has changed as well. When the district was formed, conservation was viewed in really one format. The simple acquisition of land, put a fence around it, and it's protected. And what has happened now is we possess a very diverse toolkit for land protection, none of which were available in 1971 when the district was first formed. That includes a national wildlife refuge of national significance here in McHenry County, private dedications of nature preserves by private landowners, land trusts working with private individuals for private conservation that augments public conservation, conservation agriculture, and floodplain management. These are all part of what's become an integrated conservation whole, and it works alongside all the efforts that the district does. So we are no longer the only organization that actively works to preserve land in McHenry County, and that is extremely encouraging. But it also means that in order for us to fulfill our role as a partner in this conservation partnership, we have to retain our ability to protect key parcels of land in what I would quantify as a prudent and a strategic manner. And I believe that's exactly what the district has done over the past 11 years in the post-referendum spend-out era. And I believe that the figures we showed you tonight support that that's been a very prudent and a very strategic approach to land preservation. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that's a lot of years crammed into 12 slides.
Yeah, and I think, that's very, very good. So I think we should all have a video of you that we can pull out. When people ask us questions, we can say, just a minute, I got the answer. I just have to find it. Thank you.
It's really the work of everyone sitting behind me, the
Correct.
hundreds of people that are retired behind that.
Well, you're the target sometimes, and other times you get to, take the accolades as well. So does anyone have any questions for Ed or for any member of his very capable team about this question? And Elizabeth also, who has been, part of this effort, and is sometimes also a target.
No questions, but I will comment. Thank you, Ed. Amazing presentation. Fact-filled, I appreciate that. Because as a new trustee, one of the things that I struggle with is understanding when it comes to the table of purchasing land, what's a good purchase and what isn't. So it's just nice to know that we have that behind you guys and the staff to educate us so we can support those decisions. But yeah, I know moving forward, being on this board and in the seat, that I'm going to struggle with, supporting those decisions because I just don't know enough. So appreciate the presentation.
Inspiration.
I did have a question too on those leases where they do a lease and then, the conservation district has, the rights for that. How long are those typical? Do you get those land leases or control of the land?
So there's two kinds. A conservation easement is in perpetuity and moves with the ownership of the land. So the next parcel owner, those rights that were given up in the conservation easement are permanently given up. And that's why it has to be held by some organization or another. The county could hold it, the private land trust could hold it, the district could hold it. if it's a management agreement, and we will enter into a management agreement with private landowners when it's in the best interest of the district. For example, they own half of an area we're managing, or they have the access to it. Those are typically on a 2 to 3 year basis. And they can be with a municipality. We have a multiple agreement with the village of Lake in the Hills and the Illinois Department of Natural Resources and the Illinois Nature Preserves Commission to manage Lake in the Hills Fen, where you need your library card to know who owns what. We also have, we've had management agreements with private families, farm families, and with individuals who own part of the natural area that the district owns the other half on. And those are typically for things like prescription burning or for access to the management. So those have to be renewed periodically. And a new owner could say, you know, I don't want to be any part of this anymore. Or the district could say, based on resources, we're not going to be able to renew this. So those are the two kinds.
Yeah. What would be the benefit for that landowner? To preserve the land and yet maybe to get some tax
Yeah.
relief?
I think it's interesting because each landowner, of course, you know, has their own reasons. And I've seen them for straight out conservation generosity. I mentioned a 71 acre parcel that was bought by a couple specifically to preserve it and to give the district that easement. They gave up the right to even build a house on it because that's where they were personally in their journey with conservation. For other landowners, they realize they have a valuable resource, but they may be up in age or they don't have the resources themselves to do prescription burning or the expertise. So in that case, the value may be, as a district, we can burn the entire unit, but for them, they get to have that important natural feature taken care of on their property. But if you go as far as a conservation easement, there are tax advantages at both the local and the federal level. So you can take a tax credit for your federal taxes on a conservation, the value of a conservation easement. You can also work with your local assessor to have values reduced in terms of the tax liability for the area that's in the easement, because it is a permanent reduction in usage, if you will.
Very
Yeah, it was used extensively on the East Coast, and it took probably 30 years for it to reach the Midwest, and it's really used across the Midwest now as well. It's also used to preserve agricultural rights. So there are easements that strictly allow farming in perpetuity. So it's a very valuable tool for land preservation of different types.
Thanks. It's very informative.
All right, moving right along. Next up are the trustee reports. So do any of my colleagues want to brief us on what they've been up to constructively or otherwise?
Green Drinks met this last week, and the presenter was a biology professor from MCC who's an expert on dragonflies. And when I first heard that was the topic, I wasn't sure it was going to go, but I'm glad I went. Just a phenomenal. I mean, her students must just love her. She's just full of energy, and it was a really incredible presentation and well attended too. The place was full. So then the foundation met Tuesday night. Right? There's a lot going on this week, and you know, they meet every other month. So you know, they keep tabs with what we're doing. They're kind of in the same boat. They're at the point where they're doing their budget right now. And within that, one of the big decisions that they're still contemplating, I mentioned it a couple of months ago, was should they change their status from one type of a charity to another type of charity. It doesn't sound like much. It's from an accounting standpoint, it's really important because they have much more flexibility if they become a plain vanilla charity as opposed to a focused charity the way they are right now. And that impacts us because if they become the plain vanilla type charity, there's a lot more that they can do for us as it relates to the referendum in terms of help that they can provide and funding. So that'll be something for us to watch to see what they do. Right now they're going to get some legal expertise. I think they're leaning toward making the change, but they just want to make sure that they, you know, that's the right thing to do, and they're going to get some legal perspective on that. And I would think 2 months from now, the next time they meet, they should be informed and move forward with the change. Keep it posted.
Thank you. Anyone? Yeah, okay, Sean.
Yeah, I'll go. Lloyd and I had the communications and strategy development working group on Monday again. Don't know what specifically to report, other than the fact that we are really in unison with our discussions and our planning ahead about a referendum. So it's good to know that everyone that's on this working group has agreed that we're doing this definitely soon enough to plan and to have this strategy in place to hopefully get to the referendum process. So that's going good. I think we've got one more meeting here, and then we may take a small break. I apologize. I missed the last meeting. Work has been picking up and we're back out in the field doing audits. So I apologize. I got caught up downtown. But I did want to do a quick report because, I went to the IAPD meeting with Elizabeth, and that was amazing. I attended 6 sessions during that time frame. Real quick, so outdoor electric assisted devices. John, wonderful presentation. It was great, very well attended by John. Lots of people interested, lots of questions. It was really fulfilling. So I learned a heck of a lot of stuff. I didn't even know it was out there. So public meetings and best practices and bond referendums and boardmanship and closing sessions and bonding in evolving markets. So lots of bond stuff. So I was trying to align myself with thinking about referendums while I was there. We had the Tressler Social, which was really fun. And they had rented out a bar there, and so lots of good conversations with that group. And so I had a great time. I want to thank the board for supporting that measure and allowing the staff and myself and Trustee Gaden to go. It's financially it's can be expensive, but I think it's well worth it for the staff and board to attend, and I highly recommend it. Next year, if you guys can squeeze in a day or two.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I believe the Kishwaukee Rivershed Eco-Ship Partner, I can't remember what it stands for, but correct. Meeting was at the beginning of the month, first Friday of the month. The presentation was on stream gauges, which I knew nothing about. So I was, I learned a bunch. All of the presentation was given by, I can't remember the gentleman's name. I know you were on the close one.
Right. Brad and I'm blocking it also. Scott Kuykendall from the county, of course, was running the meeting and presentation. The presenter was from the U.S. Geological Survey.
Yes, from the U.S. Geological Survey. And he just knew a ton of stuff about things that I didn't even know. So the presentation was very interesting. There were a bunch of people on the call as well who gained a lot of information from him as well. There was a gentleman who provides a website for the county where he puts up a link to all the stream gauges for fishermen and boaters to use and things like that. And so yeah, it was interesting.
Yes, I enjoyed it, and it ties in to something we're going to talk about in the executive session that has to do with groundwater pollution. And we are on the agenda of CREP to make a presentation about the groundwater issue at their next meeting in May. So, and on the subject of the groundwater pollution, Lloyd and I and Elizabeth have met with our attorneys, and we've been working on some strategy to see if we can more effectively move that case along, working alongside the Illinois EPA, perhaps with the US EPA, and perhaps by directly contacting some of the corporate officials of the parent of Arnold Magnetic Technology. Okay. And then, Chris, any updates on the meeting with the Hebron Drainage District? Did we?
No, not at this point.
Okay.
Hopefully. Something here. That's fine. We're gonna try to arrange, I'm gonna have a meeting with them, and we'll arrange a meeting again. with,
Right.
Staff.
Right. After the ice storm, Chris and Elizabeth and I met in the Hebron Township office, and there was no heat. At least no electrical. No, there was a little heat in the room related to the drainage district. But there was,
So
I think,
that made the meeting move a little.
yeah,
quicker.
right. It was worthwhile. It was an interesting discussion. Ed was there, and I think, yes, and Val also. Great.
Classic negotiation.
Right.
Yeah.
Turn off the heat. Well, very good. And John,
One more comment, I'm
Yes,
sorry,
sure.
I apologize,
sorry.
because I wasn't here last time. I wanted to recognize and congratulate John Peters for his promotion to the restoration ecology manager position, so I apologize. I wanted to congratulate him. I don't know if he's on the call or not.
Think so.
But
All right. John, anything specifically from the county board?
No, I think that just the big topics have been the budget with you and finance, and I think that finance was comfortable with the budget, and knowing that your budget was well thought out and pretty conservative, actually. I think this year. Good job, all of you, for doing it. With you were there today too, and it just got glossed right over, so I don't see any roadblocks at all for the, our meeting Tuesday to approve you.
Well, good news. Thank you.
Your efforts, John.
My pleasure.
All right, so now coming to the consent agenda, because we didn't have our usual committee of the whole.
Public comment.
Sorry.
Public comment.
Oh, yes. Excuse me.
If there's anybody, I don't know.
All right, anyone in the room or on Zoom that wishes to?
There's no one on Zoom.
Okay. Good. All right. Well, now we'll move to the consent agenda, and do any of the trustees want any of these items pulled for further discussion, separate from the consent agenda? Are there any, simple questions that we can pose to the staff before we accept a resolution to approve the consent agenda? If not, then Linda, I'm going to ask you to.
I make a
move this.
motion to accept the consent agenda as read. 12.1, approval of minutes of previous meetings. 12.18, January 12th, 2023, committee of the whole executive session. 12.1B, February 21st, 2023, regular meeting. 12.1C, February 27th, 2023, special call joint meeting. 12.2, acceptance of the treasurer's report. 12.2A, acceptance of the treasurer's report for February 28th, 2023, as presented. 12.3, resolution number 23-17, the resolution approving fiscal year 2024 salary schedules as presented. 12.4, authorization to bid 2 replacement motorcycles for the police department, BID number 0323.06.01. 12.5, authorization to bid the repainting of the exterior of Lost Valley Visitor Center, BID number 0323.07.02. 12.6, authorization to bid the repainting of the wait, that's a dupe in mine. I have 12 point, is it?
I think
Yes,
they're the
it
same.
is, 5 and 6 are.
Yeah. 12.5 and 12.6 are the same.
The bid numbers are different though.
Yes,
Big numbers, so there's a.
no,
typo.
there's not,
Oh.
not
Oh,
signed.
203.
So
No,
what's
it's
for the
06 and
recycling?
07.
Yeah, 12.6 should be authorization to prepare specifications and let bids for the reside of Region 6 Ranger Shop.
Oh.
Crystal Lake.
I don't have that at all.
I see that it's double there.
Would,
It is correct on the agenda and it is correct on the screen. It's just the annotated.
oh, sorry, well,
That's not your fault. It's.
okay, I'll do it off this one, except this is bigger.
Yeah, that's gonna have you 2 life recording. I think that's the
If you
only
just look
one.
at 12.5 and 12.6, it'll be correct on the agenda.
On this one,
Correct.
not on mine.
On this one, if you just read it from the agenda.
12.6, authorization to prepare a specification and let bids for the reciting of the Ranger 6 Ranger Shop in Crystal Lake, Illinois. BID number 0323.07.03. 12.7, I'm going back to here, resolution number 23-18, the resolution authorizing travel expenditures for the 2023 Special Districts Forum, charting the waters from June 19th to the 23rd, 2023 in Lake County, Illinois for Director of Operations, Planning and Public Safety Kramer and Operations Manager Weborg for a cost not to exceed $2,600. 12.8, resolution number 23-19, awarding contracts to the lowest responsive and responsible bidders to treat invasive species at 6 high priority restoration projects. Baxter and Woodman Natural Resources LLC of Crystal Lake, Illinois for $57 per person per hour for backpack herbicide application and $260 for herbicide application with an ATV boom sprayer not to exceed $10,000. Wetland Control LLC of Lake Villa, Illinois for herbicide labor for $49 per person. Per person. There's some mistakes on this, on mine.
2 person per hour.
Yeah, I'm missing that. For backpack herbicide. Application $71.25 for ATV boom sprayer and $112 per hour for Marsh Master application at a cost not to exceed $9,152.46. Red Buffalo Nursery of Richmond, Illinois at $54 per person per hour for backpack herbicide application. $58.40 for hand wicking application and $100 for herbicide application with an ATV boom sprayer for a cost not to exceed $35,000. And Blue Stem Ecological Services of Marengo, Illinois for $60 per person per hour for backpack herbicide application, $75 for herbicide application with an ATV boom sprayer at a cost not to exceed $9,000. Bid number 0223.08.01. 12.9, resolution number 23-20, authorizing the executive execution of an intergovernmental agreement with the McHenry County State's Attorney Office for the Crimes Against Children Task Force. 12.10, resolution number 23-21, authorizing the executive director to execute documents to submit an Illinois Department of Natural Resources 2023 local government snowmobile grant to provide McHenry County Snowmobile Association with $30,000 to maintain snowmobile trails and upgrade trails throughout the county for a 2-year period, 2024 and 2025. 12.11, ratification of authorization to request for proposals, RFPs for district-wide information technology professional services for fiscal year 2024, RFP number 0323.04.01. 12.12, resolution number 23-22, accepting the Glacial Park Plymouth building existing conditions analysis prepared by Studio 222 Architects LLC dated January 24th, 2023. 12.13, authorization to the district-wide fuel tracking program, BID number 0323.07.01. 12.14, resolution number 23-23, accepting the 2022 hunting program report and consensus
to report the recommendations for the 2023 hunting directives. 12.15, resolution number 2325, awarding a contract to A. Jules Construction LLC of Woodstock, Illinois, the lowest responsible and responsive bidder for the Prairie Trail North Storm water repairs between Ringwood Road and Barnard Mill Road in Ringwood, Illinois, for a cost not to exceed $77,148. Bid number 0322.09.03-RA. 12.16, resolution number 23-26, awarding a contract to Nanaval Construction Company of Ingleside, Illinois, the lowest responsible and responsive bidder for the Prairie Trail Link stormwater repairs south of Barnyard and Mill Road in Ringwood, Illinois, for a cost not to exceed $119,891.48. Bid number 0322.09.02-RA.
Thank you.
Well done.
We need a second. Ray's gonna take a second, so. The roll, please.
Trustee Zimmerman,
Yes.
trustee Everard,
Yes.
vice president Dom,
Yes.
trustee Gayton,
Yes.
secretary Thomas,
Yes.
and president Cook.
Yes. Okay. As we get ready to move into other board business, I'm just going to comment that in the treasurer's report, which we accepted for the period ending February 28th, our revenue year to date is about $1 million over what had been budgeted, approximately 10.2%, and our expenses year to date approximately $600,000 below budget, which is about 6.5%. So we're coming into the home stretch, and it would appear that we're going to have a comfortable margin in our budget for the year that will end at the end of March. Thank you. Congratulations. You threaded the needle. Okay. I lost my page. Try to regroup. Okay, Ray, we're going to ask you to take us through the treasurer's internal audit. Please.
Yeah. Internal 13.1A internal audit report. Did anybody pull any items?
I'm comfortable.
13.1B. Make a motion to consider the approve the payment of bills as indicated on the submission of bills pending report for the month ending February 28th, 2023. I'll second.
And the roll, please.
Trustee Everard,
Yes.
secretary Thomas,
Yes.
trustee Zimmerman,
Yes.
trustee Gayton,
Yes.
vice president Dom,
Yes.
and president Cook.
Yes.
13.2. I move to make a resolution supporting the Village of Fox River Grove's request for a 12-year extension to their tax increment financing district.
Second.
And the roll, please.
Secretary Thomas.
Yes.
Trustee Zimmerman,
Yes.
trustee Gayton,
Yes.
trustee Everard,
Yes.
vice president Dom,
Yes.
and president Cook.
Yes. So next is 13.3. First reading, strategic focus and direction for 2024 to 2028. So we're. Thank you.
All right, this should be brief. Thank you. In your packet, you again received the 3 focus areas that we discussed during the retreat. which you had the minutes for, and great discussion that we had when we had the joint meeting with our foundation. What you have in front of you this evening, and now is the time if there were any additional suggested changes that needed to be made. Otherwise, if we are good, we took the feedback from the meeting and we've incorporated that into the strategic plan. So I just want to go through these very quickly, just to move this along and say to everybody that's, you know, at home and for the record that we've gone through this since the other format was in a workshop format. So the first focus area that we have is healthy landscapes, people and wildlife. And this description remains the same. Healthy landscapes provide people with clean air, water, and healthy outdoor recreation. They buffer us, mitigate climate change, and improve the health of our community. Our natural landscapes provide community vitality and a special sense of place that defines our region, and if not diminished, is passed down through the generations. Our focus area number 2 is visitor experience. There were no changes that were made to this, and our vision is each year more than 1 million visitors enjoy the outdoor spaces and places the Conservation District provides. Their experiences on Conservation District sites become the memories they share with future generations and deepen their appreciation of and role in the protection of these natural areas. Thoughtful communication, education, and outreach provide those visitors, regardless of age, culture, or ability, the tools to feel empowered to contribute to conservation in diverse and impactful ways. Our last and final focus area is organizational excellence, and this is focused inside the organization. And for here, our vision is that the Conservation District is powered by people who believe deeply in its mission and vision. Their contributions guide the agency forward with a focus on excellence, collaboration, best practices, new technology, and innovative ideas. It is their commitment to leading by example that positions the Conservation District as a recognized industry leader and regional employer of choice. And those were the 3 vision areas. Any feedback or changes? Those were left basically how they were presented, and those are carrying forward. Everybody good with that?
I think so. Perfect. Thank you.
So then when we went into the intentions, and this is getting a little bit more specific of what we were going to do, we really did not have any changes to the healthy landscapes, people, and wildlife. And so this had 4 areas underneath it: preserve and protect additional acres of high quality natural areas, stream corridors, outdoor recreational lands, and other lands of conservation value. Again, we had a discussion at the meeting that this can mean, and you heard earlier this evening, can mean a lot of different things. It can be working with partners, it can be protecting and management of areas of sort. It doesn't say directly be simple acquisition. Manage existing conservation areas for climate resiliency and expanded nature-based solutions. Protect biodiversity and improve populations of declining plant and wildlife species. There was a change. We did have animal, and the recommendation did come back that we change animal to wildlife to be more applicable. So that change was made. And then collaborate with conservation partners to maximize funding resources and achieve conservation. Any feedback on those? All right, and then the strategies that were listed, all 7. I'm not going to go ahead and read all of these. These all stayed. We did add in on number 7, engage conservation partners in land protection. So that was a change that was made, that was added on the floor during the meeting. And then also on number 3, by declining plant and animal species, that was changed to wildlife there as well. So that was the only change that was made on those 7 specific strategies. On that one. Under visitor experience, we also have 4 intentions on these, and that is to enhance opportunities and public access amenities to ensure quality outdoor experiences for visitors while protecting sensitive resources. To collaborate with partners to grow McHenry County's outdoor economy and promote the health enhancing benefits of time spent outdoors in nature. Advance pathways to equity to ensure access for all. And lastly, to inspire conservation stewards to build public awareness and support for McHenry County's water, wildlife, and way of life. And there's no changes that were made. Those were the same that were discussed during the retreat. Everybody good with that? Those? Okay, and then the strategies, we have 6 strategies that were presented under these, and these are the same. There were no additional changes that were made. These remain. Were there any other thoughts or ideas?
Pack in, pack out, is that something that should be? I mean, I know we just implemented it, that's something for the visitor experience.
It would probably align, I mean, that would be an actionable step, that'd probably be a work plan tactic. Which is a current program, but it would find itself, how is that, as we evaluate that program, how is that impacting the visitor experience positively, negatively, it can also be unhealthy landscapes, and, but I think that's something to evaluate, on the tactic, which will be the next phase, which we'll talk about just in a moment. So are we good with the visitor experience? Okay. And then lastly, organizational excellence, set a few edits that we did make to this. On this one, this remained responsibly build and sustain a strong and skilled workforce by recruiting, retaining, and developing staff, volunteers, and leadership that represents the communities served. Interesting, today we were at the county and they talked about in your strategic plan, John, the importance of retaining versus retraining and the value and the economics related to that was key. Andy noted that too. Achieve long-term financial sustainability through prudent financial planning and management. That was asked to be added in there, Bill, so we did add that. Evaluate overall agency needs and invest in staff, equipment, vehicles, and tools that improve services, communication, and increase efficiencies in our operations. And then lastly, continue our reputation for excellence in management and stewardship of McHenry County's environmental and financial resources. Beyond the prudent in that, I think that captured all the discussion during the retreat. And then the strategies, there were 10 of these. We did tweak relative to the work life, the created number 6. We streamlined that to be just promote and support a healthy workplace. We felt that was most appropriate for the external audience that would be reviewing this document, and then to foster and support personal and professional development opportunities. Otherwise, the remaining consistent with what was discussed. Anybody with that? So with all of the intentions and our next steps where we are, tonight's for first reading. You will have, again, any thoughts or ideas that you have between now and when we get together in April, but if it doesn't, the goal would be that this would roll forward. You would adopt this through second reading next month. And our staff is already, we're developing the work. And so the work plan are the specifics, the how that we're going to work that's related to capacity budget, and the two will tie together to move us towards the strategic vision and focus over the next 3 years. This is going to be a 5-year plan. So we're really going to be building a work plan that'll show fiscal year 24, 25, and 26, and what are the critical things that need to happen during that time frame. And then some opportunities that in 27, 28 that we'll be thinking about. So clearly our vision, we may not reach the final destination, because that's all driven by capacity in a 5-year period, but we should be making some good progress towards that. And then we'll analyze that year after year. We'll come back with our budget and look.
Very good.
Right, so we're well on our way. So I thank everyone for their time and their feedback and contributions. Okay, I need executive director's report here. So. Few things here. Again, thank you for those that have been attending the budget presentation at the finance and audit. We had a great shared with us today, and we have one more next Tuesday night. So that should be done, and then the budget will be all ready to roll and out, and we'll start the fiscal year with our budget approved. A lot of legislation. If you've seen the alerts from IEPD, appreciate Trustee Everhard and Director Kramer did join us for the legislative breakfast with our state elected officers, and we did have an opportunity to connect with Senator McConkey and his interest, particularly with the grants that we received in his district around the hollows and the boat access grant and the accessible pavement. And
if I could just add, he's wheelchair bound. So he was really interested. We talked to him about the kayak lift and the new path that'll go in, that'll be accessible for disabled and people. So it was a good session.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was great to be there. It's always good to connect. This, at the end of the month, is the deadline for bills to leave their origin of chamber. So if you saw IAPD, many bills that they've introduced have passed out onto the floor and they're moving along. Others that are out, some went back to, rules, or they went back to assignments depending on where they were initiated from, but we're continuing to monitor that. We'll all see next month. I will have a legislative agenda to present to the board as well. This kind of gives the guidelines so that when legislation is moving forward, we know which ones we can slip on, which ones we need to reach out and redirect. And then just a reminder, Parks Day at the Capitol is May 2nd and 3rd. IAPD sponsors it. I highly encourage, to have 1 or 2 board members, if you're available, to take the time to travel down to Springfield and to connect with them and myself. So please let me know, and the hotel books up quickly, so we want to make sure we get that reserved. And on the federal side, they are a lot of information in the last several weeks with Senate funding and then in Congress on the House side. And I just want to give again a shout out and appreciation to Don and Amy and Christie as well. Congresswoman Schakowsky, who is new to District 9, knowing and trying to track down the ARPA funding that did not score, trying to figure out what could we do to find some additional dollars to help kind of support some of the projects. And so we did kind of do a shift. The timing of their budget for the fiscal year 2024, but the federal budget would be of October 1st of 2024. So trying to, kind of speed ahead, but yet be ready to not just make a project, but to find work that we're already doing, obtaining a definition of shovel ready. But tomorrow is the deadline, limited information out the door. You had to turn it around basically in 1 week. So John shifted Amy with that. They worked on a project, so we'll be submitting to Schakowsky's office a grant for $450,000 full share. Full share of the grant. Yeah. So well done. We have letters of support that went out right away. Full support from the county, from the village of Cary, village of Algonquin, the city of Crystal Lake. We've got these environmental defenders, open lands, Chicago Wilderness Alliance.
We got.
And all this, and the state elected.
Yes.
McConkey, Wright, Wilcox, Representative Ness. So everybody that's impacted, they're full on. And so it's an application that we get the full support on. There's 15 projects that will be awarded with that. Let's see here. So Soulful Prairie.
Elizabeth, let me ask this. That then would be awarded directly to us and not go through the county process that
Correct.
was discussed at the county meeting this morning.
Yeah, it's not through Advancement Henry County. It's not ARPA funding.
This isn't ARPA.
This is not ARPA funding.
I see, okay.
It's congressional funding. They used to call it earmarks.
Okay,
Okay, so now in the House, they call it community project.
fine, perfect, okay.
Earmarks sound bad, don't they?
And we call it something else in the Senate. So,
I have an earmark here, that's a little different.
but we're gonna work through that and do that. Soulful Prairies, we've got a fundraiser that we're gonna be a charity for, as well as the environmental defenders at our foundation on September 9th. And so to mark your calendars, tickets will go on sale in June. And all the proceeds that are made, they have for 80% will go and be split between both the defenders and then the foundation of district, 50%. So
If you've ever been to Soulful Prairies, it's quite the place. It's, have you been there?
I've driven by, but not in, no.
It is phenomenal. You will enjoy it.
So be thinking, we want to have full support. This is a great, opportunity to promote the district, the foundation, and the defenders and our conservation team. And really excited about that opportunity. It's like a Ravinia, where you bring your picnic basket and there is some food and you can bring one and drink, and they have activities, and it'll just be a great great time to be had by all.
Where is so full?
It's in Woodstock.
Okay.
It's farther out.
We're up of Alden Road as
Yeah.
you go towards.
And you can the sign is really little. You can hardly
Yeah.
even see it. You would have to know where you were going to go there, but I've been there for horse events and yoga and all that. It's just wonderful. Linda's done a great job.
Sorry.
No, you're good, you're good. So that, we'll send out some more information on that. Sorry, I've just a lot of announcements that have been going on. I'm still looking for someone to the Village of Bull Valley. They had a request through their village president, the Stickney House Mansion, and they're looking to develop a holistic vision for the restoration of the mansion, creating a historic district and a community center, public park, and more. And so the date of that, there's an open house where you can view kind of their vision for this work is March 23rd through the 25th at the Woodstock Country Club, and there's various hours, generally like 11 to 3, and then 5 to 8:30 in the evening, and then they're going to do a luncheon. So if any trustee is interested on the 25th, I don't have the time, I'm assuming it's around an hour. But it would be great to have somebody kind of stop by and just to see what they are up to with that. You've probably seen some of the promotion, really excited, it's up here on the screen, of our new sticker collection, and that's a shout out to our communications and marketing team. They've taken each of our sites, given it a little bit of an identity, and got stickers are really popular. Or with some other Yeti, their laptops and things like that. So again, this will be a kind of a campaign that they're working on to connect people to visit our different sites as that gets rolling. And what is the time frame on launch?
We have a marketing plan next Wednesday. We're gonna try to make it a gamification incentive reward. So we'll flush it out, but it'll be some.
So this summer.
So we're still brainstorming what all we're gonna do. Do we have to put that individually, or how do they get them to collect them all?
But yeah, they're really cool. And then to Amy in planning, we've been working with Light Crepe, there's FREP and the Fox Water Trail. And one of the last steps for these being designated by the National Park Service as a national water trail was to get signage up on our sites. And so those have been erected. Amy's taken the lead to direct that, our operations team placing them up so they're available. And so I believe there's just one more to be done. Fox Bluff. Needs to go on that. And then the Festival of Sugar Maples, thank you for those that were able to stop by. We no longer just do drop-in. It's a register in advance event. They did very well on their product sales. And again, the weather, the staff was running, and a lot of team effort to work to pull off that event, but it was very successful.
The team did great. That's the first time I've been to that. It was a phenomenal event. It was cold. They were there, but the staff was out there. They were stomping their feet and trying to stay warm, but they really handled everything well. And the particular group I was in, there were some children that were really unruly. I mean, the parents just kind of let them go. And the staff really handled it professional. You know, they got the kids, and kids listened to them. So just a really great program. And I was told over 800 people came. That doesn't include students who came in buses. So if you include those, it's in the thousands. So heck of a program.
We'll get all the numbers for you as they're tabulating all of that stuff. So you'll have that forthcoming. And then to Cindy Jablonski, who's our wildlife ecologist, the county was getting a lot of requests. I got some pressure on spraying for the spongy moth, formerly known as the gypsy moth, and it's been renamed. And so there was a webinar Cindy attended just to kind of learn. We had our position statement on it. She did not only took all the information from the webinar, went back, reviewed some of the literature, some other additional research, checked in with our other local, forest preserve conservation agencies, what position, what the USDA is doing, et cetera. And our position is solid of what our process is, and we share that with the county. So that should help them as they get approached requests on that. So again, I appreciate her taking that and using our scientists to kind of share what's going on. And
I enjoyed reading that.
And then the last thing I will say is, and this is in the planning camp, so we're getting into you through some things last night with Biz. There is obviously work beginning on the Prairie Trail, and so some closures and some work happening, right? So the date is upcoming March. For the Prairie Trail closing.
Yeah, next week, the section between, Higgin Hills on Alpine area, it's behind the gravel pit area there. Yeah, they're hopefully gonna start vegetation clearing on Tuesday. So, then they're supposed to be done by the end of May. That's the one that includes the little bit of a re-meandering as well, so. Yeah, stay tuned. Well, it changes. I think I sent out several updates on an update in one day. So with weather and everything yet this spring, it's a little hard to pin something down.
It's a part of the trail that floods.
Yes,
Yeah. we're
yeah,
still-
we've been washing, it's been washing away a little bit at a time for a number of years now. So we'll get a little bit more square footage and we'll slow the water down. So hopefully, and it'll be, and we'll be able to add some habitat. So not only will we be able to ride safely, you'll maybe be able to see some nice things along there. So.
And that's about it. So look to the wiki well for more additional information of other things. So those are the bigger highlights.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Then, any public comments at this point?
There are none online.
Thank you. Then I guess we'll go into executive session, so. And I'm not sure, I don't think there's any action after executive session.
There's not.
Okay. Do we need a motion?
Yes.
So, Boyd's gonna move. And,
We just need to read just for the motion, what we're going into executive session, please.
Session pursuant to 2C11 probable litigation, 2C5 purchase lease of real estate, and 2C21 review of closed session minutes of the Open Meetings Act 5 Illinois CS 120/1 at sec.
I did. Trustee Zimmerman,
Yes.
trustee Gayton,
Yes.
secretary Thomas.
Yes.
Trustee Everard,
Yes.
president Cook.
yes. Thank you.
All right, so no action out of executive session. Thank you, everyone.
Elizabeth, what do we need in the way of?
So we are back in open session, and so roll call again, please.
Trustee Gayton,
Here.
secretary Thomas.
Yeah.
Trustee Zimmerman,
Present.
trustee Everard,
Here.
president Cook.
Yes. And now a motion to adjourn.
I never had a motion. Which
Okay. And Boyd seconds and another roll, please.
Trustee Zimmerman,
Yes.
trustee Everard,
Yeah.
trustee Gayton,
Yes.
secretary Thomas.
Yes.
And president Cook.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much.
We are adjourned at 8:08 PM. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.